I look back on that evening now, and I see the way Elias didn't look me in the eye.
He unlatched the heavy rusted gate of that barn, his hands shaking, with a secret he was desperate to hide. I spent the first hour in that barn trying to dry my coat by a small, flickering lantern.
The smell was the first thing that should have tipped me off, like old blood and ozone. I laid out my sleeping bag in the loft, listening to the rhythmic thudding coming from beneath the floorboards. It sounded like heavy hooves, agitated and restless, but the cadence was just too deliberate. By midnight, the storm had escalated into a full-scale assault on the barn's tin roof. What I saw stopped my heart. 3 massive bulls pacing in a circle with feral, unnatural intensity. I retreated to my sleeping bag, my pulse hammering against my ribs.
The gates weren't locked to keep the animals in. They were bolted to keep something out.
I climbed down the ladder, my boots silent on the straw, and reached for the heavy iron latch. But as my fingers brushed the cold metal, I heard a sound that froze the marrow in my bones. Elias was sitting in the corner, his back pressed against the wood, holding a long, rusted iron rod. He told me that his brother had disappeared in this barn 10 years ago, and he'd been waiting for a witness. The bulls began to shift, their snorting turning into a collective, thunderous roar. Elias looked at me, a strange, terrifying smile spreading across his face, and he dropped the iron rod. The stampede began as a vibration in the floor, a low-frequency hum that turned into a violent earthquake. I turned, and in the sliver of moonlight, I saw it. A gaunt, wild-eyed man in rags. I scrambled over the stalls, my hands raw and bleeding, and reached the main door. I tumbled into the mud, the cold rain hitting my face like salvation. I stood there in the mud, just watching the whole place fall apart. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the cold was finally starting to sink in. Elias was just standing there in the middle of all that wreckage. He was laughing, but it didn't sound like a man who'd found any peace. I didn't look back again. I just kept walking, trying to put as much distance between me and that place as I could. I never reported it. Who would believe a story about a man living in the rafters of a barn full of bulls? But some nights, when the wind howls and the house is silent, I wake up in a cold sweat. I'm still listening for the sound of hooves against wood. I wonder if I ever truly escaped the barn, or if I just became another part of the secret that keeps the valley quiet. Could you truly say you'd survive the impossible? Or would you find yourself waiting in the dark for a rescue that never comes? Let me know in the comments below. The silence is the worst part. Some secrets are better left in the dark. I still keep the maps, just in case. It's like the valley is still calling me back. I found this in the mud the morning after. Sometimes I think it's the only thing that's real. People ask me why I don't just move on. Like you can just walk away from something like that. I've tried writing it down 12 times, but the words just don't stick. Maybe some things aren't meant to be understood. Maybe they're just meant to be survived. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Like something is waiting for you to slip up? I don't think I'll ever really leave that barn. It's like a part of me is still trapped in the dark. Sometimes I hear the hooves at night. Just a faint thudding, like a heartbeat under the floor. You think you're safe, don't you? But the dark has a way of finding you. Stay safe out there. And keep your eyes on the shadows. I still see that night in my dreams.
The wind was howling like a wounded animal.
I was just looking for a place to stay. Elias opened the door before I even knocked. He was a man carved from granite and regret. He just pointed toward the barn. The barn smelled like old blood and ozone. I tried to dry my coat by the lantern. The shadows seemed to dance on the walls. I heard a rhythmic thudding beneath the floor. It sounded like heavy hooves, restless and agitated. The cadence was just too deliberate. The storm was a full-scale assault on the roof.
I crept to the edge and peered down.
What I saw stopped my heart. There were 3 massive bulls down there. Their eyes were glowing with a feral intensity. They weren't just pacing, they were weighing. I waited until the storm lost its fury. I climbed down the ladder, silent as a ghost. I just wanted to be gone. I reached for the iron latch. Then I heard a low, guttural humming.
It sounded like a funeral dirge.
Elias was sitting in the corner. He was holding a long, rusted iron rod. He said I had broken the seal. He turned his head and looked at me. His eyes were hollow and bloodshot. He said his brother disappeared 10 years ago. He didn't want my company. He wanted a witness. He needed someone to verify that he hadn't gone mad. Suddenly, the bulls began to shift and roar. The barn doors rattled in their frames. Elias looked at me with a terrifying smile.
He dropped the iron rod and unlocked the side gate.
He said he was tired of being the only one who knew. Tonight, the debt would finally be paid. The floor began to vibrate as the bulls charged the walls. They were terrified of something hiding in the loft. I turned and saw a figure in the moonlight. It was a man, a gaunt version of Elias, dressed in rags. His body was covered in the same scars as the walls. It was the brother who had supposedly disappeared. He had been living in the rafters, playing a twisted game. The chaos was absolute as the bulls smashed the partitions. I didn't think. I just ran. I scrambled over the stalls, my hands raw and bleeding. I reached the main door and threw the bolt. It was rusted shut, but the bulls pushed the doors open. I tumbled into the mud, the cold rain hitting my face. I didn't look back until I reached the tree line. The barn was a ruin. The front wall collapsed. The bulls were scattered into the darkness of the fields. Elias stood in the wreckage, laughing a hollow sound. The brother was nowhere to be seen. I never went back, because who would believe me? Some nights, I wake up in a cold sweat. I listen to the sound of hooves against wood. I wonder if I ever truly escaped the barn. I still sit here in the quiet, just staring at my hands. They don't stop shaking when the wind starts picking up outside. I wonder if I should have said something to the cops. But who's gonna believe a story about a guy living in the rafters? Sometimes, when the wind howls, I'm right back there. It's like I never really left that barn at all. I can still hear those hooves hitting the wood. It's a sound that just doesn't want to leave my head. I wonder if he's still out there, standing in the wreckage, just waiting for someone else to show up and witness his hell. Was his brother a victim? Or was he just as twisted as Elias? The whole thing just makes my head spin.
Maybe I'll never know the real truth of what happened. Some secrets are just meant to stay buried in the valley.
Should I write it all down or just let it go? I don't know if anyone would even believe me. Some things are just better left in the dark. I'm done trying to make sense of it all.
I'm a survivor, I guess.
But a part of me is still back there, waiting in the dark. I can't shake the feeling that I'm still there. Every creak in this place sounds just like that barn. It's like the sound of those hooves never really left my head. I'm just waiting for the shadows to move. I need to get a grip. Just a glass of water, that's all I need. That dripping sound, it's driving me crazy. I don't even know who I'm looking at in the glass. Is he still out there, waiting for the next guy? I hope to God nobody else finds that place. Maybe if I write it down, it'll finally stop. Maybe it'll finally leave me alone. The bulls were waiting for something. And the brother, he was just watching from the rafters. Did I just hear that? No, it's just my head playing tricks on me. I made it out, but I'm still not free. I'm still trapped in that barn. It's done. Now I just have to live with it. I finally put the pen down, but the silence in the room feels heavier than before. It's like I've invited that barn into my own living room, and now I can't get it to leave. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that valley. I can still hear the wind howling like a wounded animal against the farmhouse walls. Elias didn't even wait for me to knock. He just opened the door, like he knew exactly who was standing there. The barn didn't smell like hay or manure. It smelled like old blood and ozone, and I was too desperate for warmth to notice. Those bulls weren't just pacing. They were waiting for something, and I was right in the middle of it. I reached for the door, ready to run. Then I heard it, a low, guttural humming coming from the shadows. Elias was just sitting there, holding that rusted rod. He told me he'd been waiting for someone to witness the price of his survival. The bulls started roaring, and the whole barn began to shake. Elias just smiled at me and dropped the rod, ready to let the chaos in. I scrambled over the stalls, my hands raw and bleeding. I hit the door, and the bulls pushed me out into the cold, pouring rain. I never went back to that farm. But some nights I still wonder if I ever really escaped, or if I'm still waiting in the dark. I still can't shake the feeling that I never really left that place. Every time the wind picks up, I'm right back in that barn. The sound of those bulls hitting the walls, it was like the whole world was breaking apart. I can still feel that vibration in my bones. And then I saw him up in the rafters, watching us like a ghost. He wasn't a monster, just a man who'd lost everything to that place. I didn't think, I just ran. My hands were raw, bleeding, but I didn't even feel it until I was out. The rain felt like salvation hitting my face. I didn't look back once until I hit the trees. When I finally looked back, the barn was just a pile of kindling. Elias was standing there, laughing at the sky like he'd finally won. Who would believe me? A man in the rafters? Bulls in the barn? It sounds like a bad dream, even to me. Some nights, I still wake up hearing those hooves. I wonder if I ever really got away, or if I'm still part of that secret. Could you really say you'd survive the impossible? Or would you just be waiting in the dark for a rescue that never comes? Let me know what you think in the comments. Some things are better left in the dark.
I sit here in the quiet, trying to put it all down on paper.
But the words just don't seem to capture the weight of what happened.
The wind was howling like a wounded animal that night.
It felt like a warning I was too desperate to hear. Elias opened the door before I even knocked.
He was a man carved from granite and regret.
The barn was enormous, built with heavy timber beams.
But the smell was the first thing that should have tipped me off. I laid out my sleeping bag in the loft.
Below me, I heard a rhythmic thudding that sounded like heavy hooves.
I crept to the edge and peered down through the floorboards.
There were no cows, just 3 massive bulls with eyes that glowed with a feral intensity.
I climbed down the ladder, my boots silent on the straw. Then I heard it, a low, guttural humming coming from the darkness.
Elias was sitting in the corner, holding a long, rusted iron rod.
He told me that by waking them, I had broken the seal.
The stampede began as a vibration in the floor.
I looked up and saw him, the brother, hiding in the rafters. I tumbled into the mud, the cold rain hitting my face like salvation.
I stood there watching the barn crumble into nothing.
The rain just kept falling, like it was trying to wash the whole nightmare away.
I knew then that the silence of this valley was going to be my only friend for a long time.
I turned my back on the ruins and started walking. Every step felt like I was leaving a piece of myself behind in that mud. Even when I heard Elias laughing in the distance, I didn't dare look back. The trees finally gave me some cover from the storm. I leaned against a pine, just trying to get my hands to stop shaking.
The adrenaline was wearing off, and that's when the real fear started to set in.
I looked down at my hands and saw the mud and blood. It was like a mark, a reminder of everything I'd just seen. I tried to wipe it off, but it felt like it was stained into my skin for good. Back home, I'm still staring at this blank page. The memory of that barn is so clear, it's like I'm still there. Maybe writing this down is the only way to finally get that ghost out of my head. I start writing, and the sound of the pen is the only thing I hear. I put it all down. The bulls, Elias, and that brother in the rafters. Every word feels like a fight, like I'm trying to keep from just burning it all. The wind starts howling outside, just like it did that night. I stop writing and look at the window. My heart just about stops.
I swear I hear hooves, but I tell myself it's just the house settling.
I walk to the window and look out, but there's nothing there. Just the yard and the trees, swaying in the wind. I know I'm not crazy, but maybe some things are better left in the dark. I sit back down and finish the last page. I don't know if anyone's ever gonna believe me, but that's okay. The story's out of my head now, and for the first time, I feel a little peace. I close the notebook and just sit there in the quiet. The wind's gone, and the whole valley feels like it's holding its breath. I wonder if I'm really free, or if I'm just waiting for the next storm. I stare at the notebook, wondering if I've finally let it go.
The silence in here feels heavy, like it's waiting for me to say something else.
I think about tossing the whole thing into the fire. Just watch it turn to ash and be done with it. But I can't do it. I need to know it's real, even if it haunts me. The wind's picking up again. It sounds just like it did that night. I close my eyes, but the smell is still there. It's like I never really left that place. I feel like someone's watching me. but there's nobody here.
I'm losing it, aren't I? Just a story, Julian. Just a story. Maybe it's not over yet.
Maybe this is just the beginning.
I gotta write it down.
I gotta make sure someone knows. The silence is back.
And so is the story. I can still smell it, even now.
That metallic tang of old blood and ozone.
It's like the barn is still right here with me.
I spent that first hour in the loft, listening to the rhythmic thudding beneath the floorboards. I told myself it was just livestock, but the cadence was all wrong.
By midnight, the storm was a full-scale assault.
The rain sounded like shrapnel hitting the metal.
I couldn't sleep, so I crept to the edge of the loft.
What I saw stopped my heart. There were no cows, no horses, just 3 massive bulls pacing in a circle, waiting.
I started to piece it all together.
The gates weren't locked to keep the animals in. They were bolted to keep something out. By morning, the storm finally lost its fury. I climbed down, ready to get out of there.
But then I heard it, a voice singing in the dark.
Elias was sitting in the corner, holding a rusted iron rod. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the bulls.
His eyes were hollow, reflecting a mind completely shattered.
He didn't want my company. He wanted a witness.
Then the bulls began to roar, shaking the whole building.
Elias smiled and unlocked the gate to let the chaos in.
The stampede was like a violent earthquake. I turned and saw him in the rafters. It was the brother, living in the shadows all along.
I scrambled over the stalls, my hands raw and bleeding.
I threw the bolt and tumbled into the mud.
The cold rain hit my face like salvation.
I stood there at the tree line, watching the barn fall apart. The bulls were just shadows now, running off into the dark fields.
It was like the whole nightmare was finally being washed away by the rain.
Elias was still there, in the middle of the ruin. He had his hands up, laughing at the sky like he'd finally won.
It was a hollow, broken sound that I'll never forget.
I couldn't watch him anymore. I just turned my back on that place and started walking. I knew I was never coming back to this farm.
I never reported it because who would believe me?
Who's gonna believe a story about a man living in the rafters?
It sounds crazy even to me now.
But some nights, when the wind howls and the house is silent,
I wake up in a cold sweat.
I can still hear the sound of hooves against the wood.
I wonder if I ever truly escaped that barn.
Or if I just became another part of the secret.
Maybe I'm still there, waiting in the dark.
could you truly say you'd survive the impossible?
Or would you find yourself waiting in the dark for a rescue that never comes? Let me know in the comments below. I'm done talking about it for tonight. The silence is the worst part.
It's like the barn is still here with me.
Stay safe out there. You never know what's waiting in the dark.
I can't just sit here and pretend it's over. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that barn. The silence in this house is almost louder than the storm was.
It's like the valley is still watching me.
I should have burned this thing months ago.
But I keep it just to make sure I'm not losing my mind. There it is again. The smell of that place. It never really leaves you.
Just a bad dream, right?
That's what I keep telling myself. It's like a heartbeat that won't stop. Thump, thump, thump.
I can't stay here tonight. I gotta get out of this place.
where am I even gonna go?
There's nowhere left to run.
Maybe it's not a memory.
Maybe it's a warning.
I guess some secrets are meant to stay buried.
But they never really stay down, do they?